So once again, hello. You guys, so if you've read and you're thinking to yourself, why has he called it this? The answer is very simple. I liked Tolkien, read Tolkien growing up, and when I was trying to think of a name for something related to burnout, you've got what was it, Death March and the Mythical Man Month. There's great titles, but I decided to go old school Tolkien and steal the internal title for The Hobbit. So Death March and Back Again, A Grinder's Tale. So as a side note, I play a little good bit of poker on the side at times, and well, now not anymore. Sorry, I'm married and have a small child, so I don't do anything anymore. And it's a miracle that they let me out of the house to come do this. So, poker grinder, I figured, all right, we're all grinding it out. If you're new to the career or you've been in the career for a while, you're probably trying to survive till 65, 70. You may have a ways to go. I still have a ways to go. So with that in mind, let's get started. And you guys are probably wondering who I am. Hello, my name's James. You may not notice that my hair is not pink anymore. We got bought by Cisco. I used to work for a company, Landcope, when I was here last year. That's who I worked for. Cisco bought us. I will not be talking anymore about Cisco, but they are the reason why I had pink hair. You may be thinking, why is that? Well, they gave us a whole bunch of application security training, and then I made a stupid bet with engineers that they couldn't finish said security training in 2 weeks, and 39 of them did it, and the original bet was for 30. So at the beginning of this year, I dyed my hair pink, and then I became the most popular father at my daughter's daycare because I had pink hair. The parents really didn't like me so much, but whatever. So that's who I am. What you guys are probably more focused on is why is this guy who has pink hair and seems relatively happy up here talking to you guys about burnout? The answer is that over my career of about 19 years as of October, I've burned out 4 times. 2 of those times, I basically had to leave the job I was in. And it was not really because the job had improved and things had gotten better, but mentally I was just done. I couldn't associate, I'll use my big psychology words, I couldn't disassociate the mental state I was in with the job that I was at. The other 2 times I just had to step back and change my demeanor a little bit. So that's what this is. And a lot of it is basics. Some of the stuff you're probably going to hear and you're going to think to yourself, that's obvious. But the thing that I've realized is that we're not very good at doing the foundational and basic stuff. We want to jump straight to the advanced stuff. Half the reason why we're in this room and in this industry and why we're at conferences like this is because we want to see the exciting stuff, but we don't really take the time to build up our foundations. So, bear with me. There'll be some foundational stuff, and then if you want to talk more advanced stuff after that, we can get into at least the stuff that I'm trying now to kind of keep myself in a good place. So, with all of that in mind and a little bit of a long-winded introduction, I kind of wanted to start by showing you guys what my day looks like. And this is not really to brag or to say, look how busy I am. If I can do this, everybody can. It's more of what you're going to see is that your pressures are not only coming from work when you're talking about burnout, it is everything that is happening on a daily basis in your life. So with that in mind, this is my morning. So I wake up at 4:30 because, as my wife says, I hate myself. It's more because 4:30, when you have small children or you have a lot of things going on, in the morning is the only time that I can wake up, start to get ready, and have a moment of peace where no one is asking me for something, and I can just sit down, work on, as you guys might notice, presentations or side projects. And then about 7:15, I get my daughter ready, and then we leave the house. I live in Atlanta, so we try to beat all the traffic. It never works, but you try. And 20 minutes later, we arrive at her daycare, and then luckily I'm around the corner. So at about 8:30, I am in my office, and that's good. It's good opening for the day. And then all the normal workday stress happens, and I go pick up my daughter from daycare. They get very picky if you don't pick up your children from daycare. People who don't have kids yet, you'll learn about this if you have kids. And then, as you guys can see, about 40 minutes later, we arrive home. Normally that's because my daughter asked for 5 more minutes to play, and I let her do that. And then sometimes I head out for training. I study martial arts, or I've got other stuff. We all have things that we're working on. Most nights I like to stay home. And then as I call her the little munchkin, I get her ready for bed, and I usually pass out about the same time, if not a little bit later. So, and then there's this, if this wasn't enough, but in February we're adding a second child to the equation, so I'll see how you guys can see how I am actually able to hold up to what I'm about to tell you, and as they say, practice what you preach. So once again, this is not really to show how busy I am. This is to show that there's a lot of potential things that can stress you out that can actually be contributing to burnout. So how do we prevent this? Well, we start with the thing that is what I did not address when I was going through my schedule, which is the workday. As an old boss of mine put it, you spend probably more time with the people that you work with than you do with your family. I mean, think about it. It's 8 to 9 hours every day, 5 days a week. You're going to be around the people and the stuff that you do, so you'd really better like it. And as I will point out, burnout is inevitable. You are going to experience times during your career, especially when you look at the span of it and during your life in general, where you are just going to feel like, you know what, I should have just become a history professor. I mean, at least all that stuff's written down. I can just go look it up, I can tell someone what it is, and then I can give my lectures. But we would find that boring if we really admit it. So what we do is we deal with the stress. So how do we do that? Well, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I'm going to take you through what is a typical workday. And, raise your hands if you guys have ever had this happen to you. Imagine a world where everything is a priority, right? So all of these things come in, they're all in our faces, and they are constant. In fact, in the 3.5 hour drive to get from Atlanta to here yesterday, when I logged onto my computer and saw what was happening at work, I thought that the world had literally caught on fire in the 3.5 hours, and so that's what I spent most of yesterday. So if you didn't see me, I was actually here yesterday, but I was hiding out in my room, fixing all the problems in the world because everything was a top priority. But that's just the reality. Actually, we'll change reality in a minute. I like doing that. And then while you're working, fire one happens. All right, I'm going to deal with fire one. An alert happens. It could be through Slack. It could be an email. It could be a coworker coming up to socialize. Name it. That's what it is. And then another one happens, and then another one happens. And by the way, I'm hoping that anyone who plays video games recognizes, this is from Metal Gear Solid. I wanted to play the tone of the little comms device going off because that actually is more annoying than the guards detecting you. But that just seemed like it would, kind of give people seizures, and I don't like doing that to my audience. So we have everything as a top priority on our to-do list. We have constant alerts. Eventually it feels like the house is on fire, and we're trying to put out small fires when the building around us is already burned to the ground. So what this leads to is a feeling of feeling busy, but not being actual productive. You're just basically stomping out the things that you can get to, and you don't feel, at the end of the day, you don't feel like you got anything done, and that's it. A friend of mine at one point said that he was working on a project, and he said that the team finally came to the realization that they had to learn how to prevent the fires from happening while the building was on fire. And so they just started ignoring things. And they started, if something was above a certain level, they would fix it. And if it stopped the actual thing from running, they would deal with that. But then everything else just got put on a back burner until they had found ways to prevent the alerts from actually happening. So we're going to get to a point where you have to do that in our lives as well as, with the software we work on. So in our work lives, what I think of as being key to this is being able to minimize the interference. You can eliminate it, but you can get rid of a lot of it. And so this is some tactics that I used on how I did this. The first thing, which is actually the most difficult, is especially if you have a work day like mine, you've already got tons of commitments and meetings. You've got people coming up and asking you to do things. And what I actually did was do something like this. Now, I realized that when I went to go find a picture of this that I couldn't show you guys my actual work calendar. I'm pretty sure Cisco frowns on that. So what I did is I created a Google slide, but this is actually just I copied and pasted from my Google Calendar what is actually my work calendar, and it's 2 periods. Sometimes it's only one for a day, and this is not set in stone, but it's times where I can just get work done. And it's anything that's on my to-do list, I basically have cordoned off meetings for myself. Some days you have to go find a room and hide in. Other days you have to go work from home, or as I like to say, I work from the local Starbucks near my daughter's daycare. Once again, it's right around the corner from my work, but if you're not in the office, they can't find you. And that's key to this. So we're entering into a period of training the people around us to know that there's just certain times we're not going to be available for things. And that's so that we can actually get done the stuff that we need to do that, our employers are paying us for. And it also is a way to eliminate the fires and then, get on to actually being productive. The second thing is, show of hands if you're brave. How many of you guys work in an open office? Okay, that's at least 3/4 of the room. Cool. I do as well. How many of you guys have a good pair of headphones? Okay. Not as many people. Invest in a good pair of headphones. Well, okay, I should have clarified. If you're in an open office but you don't have an office, invest in a good pair of headphones. So open offices are great. They facilitate communication. It translates to socializing. They facilitate interruptions. So I've seen it, where offices actually have a set of elaborate flags and lights of, red means I'm working, don't interrupt me. You need to do that in your office, it's going to contribute to the anxiety you're feeling because you want to be a nice person, you want to help the people around you, but at times you just have to get stuff done, right? So you have to work on minimizing that. You have to be able to have conversations and say, look, from this, going back to the original slide, you have to be able to say, during these times, I just got to knock things out. Most people understand because they're there to do the same thing, but that is the hardest part of doing it. Now, you still have a ton of alerts, you still have a ton of priorities. How do you deal with analyzing those priorities? So, bonus trivia question. Anybody recognize the man in this photo? Okay, so his name is Vilfredo Pareto. Most people know of Pareto's law or the 80-20 principle. Hopefully that's not new. So the 80-20 principle says that, and this kind of even works out to lower percentages, but 20% of your effort is going to solve 80% of your problems. I like starting with the positive example, but really in reality what this means is that 80% of your headaches are going to come from 20% of your customers, programming, code, whatever it is. Insert thing here. Now, what Pareto found this out was he was I believe an economics professor. I may be getting that wrong. You guys can fact check me later. But what he found was in his garden that 20% of his pea plants, the grow peas, they produced 80% of the peas from his harvest. And so then he started looking around and applying this to other things, and now we are a grateful society because most of us can, whether we're abusing it or actually using it logically, we can attribute Pareto's law to a lot of things. So what we need to do is when we look through our priorities, and if we can negotiate our priorities, just try to find the things that are somewhat of the Archimedes lever. This one thing will then kind of domino affect the rest of the things. It's not easy, and once again, it can be abused very heavily, but this is very good to eliminating a lot of that core stress in our work days. So we eliminate our interference, and then ideally, if I can find the button on my little clicker thing, we have improved output, which then leads to being like this guy. And not really, but if you feel more productive during the day, it does have an actual ability of reducing your stress. And I say this from personal experience. When I look at the end of the day, and this comes from, after 18 years of being either a sysadmin or writing code and being able at the end of the day to point to saying, look at that, I did that, to now the guy who causes engineers to have more fires in their day, you still feel pretty good when you get something done at the end of the day. So if you can do that, you can minimize your distractions, you can reduce the anxiety. That leads to an increased amount of space, which then allows you to start looking at other areas of your life, because that's what happens is once you've solved this core chunk by doing this, then you look around and you think to yourself, well, what else can I improve? This leads us to our next section. Worserer, weaker, and slower. So funny enough, when I looked this up, I found out that worserer is an actual word, at least according to Urban Dictionary. So it's on the internet. It's got to be true, right? So for me, it got to a point where I noticed this as I got older, and for people who are young, it will happen to you, unfortunately. It's a terrible thing. Do not get old. What I realized was that I was getting slower. My mind wasn't working as quick, and I was like, okay, I address this. There's that part of our brains, we're engineers, we have to solve things. There are problems, we must solve them. And so last year when I was here, as you guys can see from the picture, I was about 80 pounds heavier than I am now, and this is not about the weight. It's actually about finding the thing that is like I said, the Archimedes lever. This was my 20%. It was losing weight and made me feel better, made me be able to think faster. Funny enough, once again, I am not a doctor, and all experiments that were in this talk are for a N of 1. So for me, this worked. You need to find your Archimedes lever for what is going to be improving either your mental health or your physical health, whatever that is, because that will then channel back into the now increased space and reduced anxiety. And the reason why I realized this was because, this is a very long staircase. I still would not want to climb that right now, even as improved as I am. Most people don't like stairs, but even simple tasks felt like this. And, if you played sports or you did any kind of exercise, it was like trying to do that injured, which is not really sane. So when I would be looking at things in work, whether it was a programming problem or a bug I was trying to solve, things just felt more difficult. And then I would think to myself, you know what, I'm just tired, I need more caffeine. And then I ended up like that little guy. And there have been times in my life when I thought I could see sounds. They did not end well. And so, I would keep drinking the caffeine, I'd keep looking at the problems, and I'd feel really hyper, and I would make mistakes. And then both me and the code I was working on would crash, which then leads to increased anxiety because I can't solve simple problems, which leads to increased chance of burnout. So I had to find a way to kind of reboot myself. And like I said, for me, that ended up being just dropping weight. For other people, it may just be going out and walking. It may be doing something else. So let's look at some other ways that you can do this besides what I did. And I'm going to start with probably what is the hardest for most people in this room, but is actually the most effective. So how do you recharge? How do you recover? Well, you sleep. Everybody looking at this cat right now wants to go take a nap, don't we? I mean, this cat looks awesome. And most of us think that we can survive on 3 to 4 hours. Unless you are a genetic mutation, of which there are some people, you need more sleep, probably between 7 to 9 if you're like the average person in the world. So I started sleeping more. Once again, I didn't start with that, but that's what it led to. I sleep more. You guys may be thinking, this guy wakes up at 4:30 in the morning, how does he sleep more? Well, I go to sleep at 9 o'clock at night, which, pretty cool. Good night's sleep leads to improved cognition, leads to lower stress. If you guys know about cortisol is the thing that actually increases your stress. Funny enough, it also increases your weight. And then, so you're like, okay, I'm sleeping more. Great, James. That's awesome. How do I keep going? Well, now we get into exercise. I put this here because I don't run, but most people, when they think of exercise, they think of running. I specifically trained in martial arts, so I wouldn't have to run. It was I will injure the other person and then calmly walk away. Because once again, I don't run. I have been chased once. I ran then. It did not end well. It was a 4-year-old, or actually at that time a 3-year-old. She was really quick and caught me. My daughter is surprisingly fast for as small as she is. So exercise, find ways to relieve stress. This could just be stepping out of the office and walking somewhere. It could just be taking a lap around the office walking. It could just be anything. I mean, think about it. You could go outside and sit down and stare off into the trees, or, like I'm watching the cars right now through the window, and it's very calming. That's what you want to do. You want to do something that kind of gets you out of the zone. And then finally, my favorite thing to reduce anxiety, find something to geek out on. Find a hobby. I will point out that this guy may be the exception to the rule if you need to do something that is outside of your work to reduce your stress, because this man's name is Daniel King. Look how happy he is. His job is lasers, and he has a lot of them. And I don't think that he's very stressed, because he looks very happy with what he does every day. So unless you are Daniel King, which, hang on. No, okay. No one in this room is Daniel King. No one works on, well, someone, yes, question, or just? Okay. Okay, no, that's fine. We actually have Daniel King in the audience. So find a hobby. And I stress that you should find a hobby that is not connected to your work. Because what happens is you get into your hobby, it reminds you of something from work, and then you start spending on the thing from work, which increases your anxiety. But if it's not connected to it, you basically put all your work problems on the back burner, and that allows your subconscious mind, or the extra cycles while you're working on your hobby, to spin on the problem, but you don't realize it. So. And it's just fun. So for me, I do martial arts, I brew beer, both of which are very relaxing. If you guys will see me later struggling with a simple padlock, I like lock picking, but I'm not very good at it, which leads me to my last point. You do not have to be good at your hobby to enjoy it. I enjoy getting stressed out over locks, and I enjoy not being good at lock picking, but I still do it every time I have a chance. So we apply these things. We've created space at our jobs. We now found hobbies with our lives. We are better, stronger, faster. We have the technology, we can improve ourselves. So once again, I am not a physician. I do not play one at security conferences. If you decide to go some extreme route, check with a physician, or if you get injured, please don't come to me. I will not be able to help you. So I would like to point out to you guys, this is my current challenge. I love kettlebells for 2 reasons. One, they look simple. They look like cannonballs with handles. They are very heavy. You can do simple movements with them, and when I'm done working out with them, everything at work seems a lot easier, because even though it's a simple activity of picking up a heavy thing and putting the heavy thing down again, when I am done working out in the mornings, everything else seems a lot easier, because, man, I do not want to do that for my daily life. I would much rather stare at my computer screen and be stressed out over the things happening in the little ones and zeros than moving physical objects. So that is kind of looking at, so let me recap real quick, because I realize I'm rushing through this a little bit. We started with how can we improve our day-to-day work life, right? We start with let's reduce our interference. Let's get more space to actually get done the tasks that matter. And then let's kind of look how we can improve our mental health, our physical health, because these things are going to channel back into how fast we can get the core things done that we want to get done in our job. There's something that is actually the key to really all of this, and it's so important I created a third section for it, even though it really spans everything else. And you guys may think, like a friend of mine, that the statement I'm about to put on the screen is a little weird, but once I break it down, I'm hoping it's going to work out. And I didn't actually come up with this, and I'll give credit where credit is due. So, discipline equals freedom. So when my friend of mine first saw this, his comment was, "Wow, that's really Orwellian." and yeah, it is. But I actually got to thank two people who came up with this. They wrote a book. I recommend it to everybody that I meet. It's called Extreme Ownership. It's written by two former Navy SEALs, one who's retired, Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. These guys are awesome. They both sound like Batman, like Christian Bale Batman, which apparently is a requirement to become a Navy SEAL. I have not heard someone who was in the teams that did not sound like that. But the reason why this is interesting is because it's actually a dichotomy. The more areas that we have discipline in, the more freedom we have when we're actually doing something. It sounds weird, but I'm going to show you guys how this works, because this is what I found for me. Oh, and it can be abused. So most of you guys, anybody in here use Jira for development, bug tracking, etc.? Okay, so that's what we use. And like I said, until recently when I changed what I do for a living, I was an engineer. I was fixing bugs. I was, creating bugs. Let's be honest, I probably created more than I fixed. I can be honest. You guys are my friends, right? It's all good. So you may be thinking to yourself, we have these processes built around ticketing, right? Okay, so I see the bug, I reproduce the bug, I create a branch, I write some code, I test the bug, I create a pull request for that, I do all this thing. The list keeps going on and on and on. It's a simple bug. Come on, guys. It's a regex problem. I can fix it with one regex line. It'll be good. Duh, trust me, it'll work. And you think to yourself, I would just be able to fix the bug and everything will be fine. But you need to have discipline, right? Because you're just going to introduce another bug if you're honest with yourself. So that's what I did. And it was really because I just didn't follow one of the steps. So a bug that I had worked on and closed and tested, and it was all good, got reopened. And this is Git, by the way. I put this in here because I use Git. I still don't know how Git works, really. If you know how Git works, please see me after the talk. I would love to understand it on a deeper level. So you do all these things in Git, and then eventually your code works, and it builds something, and it tests something, and we're good. So the QA who looked at my bug reopened it. And I was very confused by this because I'm watching it build on my machine. I'm looking at how it works. It's fine. Everything's good. Why is it saying this? And then I looked, and I could see the code. It was in the branch. It was committed. I had never pushed it back to the origin. I hadn't followed the process. I had not been disciplined. Well, this was time out of my life. This was things that I didn't need. It was an alert. It was fire. It was all the things that we don't want to have in our jobs. And it increased my stress levels, which gets me closer to burning out, which I don't want to do. I should just have been disciplined. So, practice discipline, enjoy freedom in multiple ways. So I'm going to show you this because why do we have processes? Well, so I like this picture, and this is I do love the military, and it shows that even trained professionals can make mistakes. So does anybody recognize what's going wrong in this picture? If not, got out another person. Exactly. Yeah. So in firearm safety, muzzle awareness. Don't point the gun at anything you don't intend to destroy. Now, what happened probably before this picture is this gun was checked, triple checked, and it was empty, and everyone had practiced. But you practice the little things so that when you're in a critical situation, you don't make a mistake. You have to be disciplined. And once again, this is not to knock the guys in the picture. It was just when I was looking for pictures for this, trying to find a mistake. This one, I don't even know what I was searching for. I just saw this picture and went, ooh, that's a good one. So how can we do this? Well, do you have a process? You don't have a process? Okay, build a process. Step one, build a process. See, we're disciplined even in our approach to developing disciplined processes. You now have a process. Does the process work? Okay, we test the process. All right, we've tested the process. Does everyone know the process? All right, we practice the process. All right, now we've practiced the process. Everybody knows it. It works. Follow the process. Do not deviate from the process. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, okay, I don't see a lot of creativity in your discipline equals freedom thing so far. Let me go back to the Navy SEALs. Now, the Navy SEALs are probably some of the most effective operators in the world. They are the most efficient in very chaotic situations. And if you even get a chance to join the teams, it means that you've already survived months of like very brutal, I mean, everybody here knows about Hell Week and the BUDS training and all that. And that's just to get in. After that, you get to do the real work, which is what everybody talks about who's actually made it through BUDS. So these guys have to work in a group. They have to move methodically. They have to be able to accomplish things in highly dynamic situations, which is the military speak for things have gone sideways completely and will continue to do so all the time. So how can they have this kind of fluidity? How can they adapt quickly but still be some of the most disciplined operators in the world? And the answer is that the discipline gives them the framework so that they don't have to think about what the next step is. They just accomplish the objective, and once that objective is accomplished, and however they chose to do that, they move to the next task, and then they accomplish it with the freedom that they have because that's inside the box. This leads to things that are smoother and repeatable, which is really what we want. If something's smooth and repeatable, we don't have to think about it. If we don't have to think about it, we don't waste cycles on it, and then we're not as stressed about it. So to kind of simplify this, in our previous example, the blue boxes are where we have our freedom. Overall the arrows lead to our framework. This is how you can have discipline and freedom at the same time. And once again, it has to be balanced. It can be abused like everything else in the world. But yeah, that's how we do it. So just to wrap up and kind of give you some of my closing thoughts on this. At first you kind of, we all focus on not burning out and how we think about our work. I got to fix my work first. So we do that by creating space, by minimizing the interference that we get on our day-to-day. We focus on the actual high priorities, and we actually have conversations with the people around us to say, look, you've told me there are 3 things. I only have time to get, say, 2 of them. You tell me which of the 2 are the highest. And what's funny is as engineers, we get problems and we want to fix them. It's what really makes us good at this. But at the same time, we have to know when the problem is we can't do everything all the time, and we have to make people make tough choices, and sometimes those choices are above our pay grade, so to speak. And so we just have to actually have the conversation. I know, I don't like having conversations, but you have to. I would much rather just close my eyes, look at the problem, and then solve the problem. And then once we're solving our task more efficiently and more effectively, then we can start to look at, okay, well, where can I improve other things? And some of that is looking at our physical well-being, looking at our mental health, making sure that those things are good. And then finally, if you're like me, you want to practice discipline so you can enjoy the freedom. And it is a duality, and it is, can be a little bit paradoxical to think about that, but it does work. And then, because everything continues for at least the next, say, 30 to 40 years, depending on where you are in your career, rinse, wash, and repeat. So, once again, at the beginning of this, you'll remember I said burnout is inevitable. There are probably going to be times, even with having a lot of tools and having kind of a defensive layer to protect you, that you're still going to burn out. But use the tools to insulate yourself. Start with the foundation, build it up, and then you can start playing around more advanced tactics. And these things will start to become clearer and clearer as you're working through it. And hopefully you can grind it out over the next 30 years unless you somehow become independently wealthy. And if you do, remember, I tried to help you out. Buy me a beer at least. All right, do we have any questions? Really anything, you guys can even, it's all good. And if you don't, that's cool too.
What was your weight loss thing? What was more specific?
So what I've realized over my life, actually the question was what was the weight loss thing? So what I've realized over my life is that, if I'm here and I kind of want to be here, I have to go all the way over to here. It's personality train. Once you kind of accept things about yourself, you can use them more effectively. So what I did was something called a nutritional ketosis, or a ketogenic diet. Basically what it breaks down to is a macro level, very simply, of about 75 to 80% of my calories came from fat, which is very counteractive if you look at the nutritional data. And then 5% maximum was carbs. And what happens is you convert over to your body producing ketones instead of glycogen, and you burn the ketones, then cause your body to burn fat. So you're taking in fat as your fuel source, you're burning through all of that, and then once your body's depleted of glycogen, or glucose more commonly, you start burning fat. This led to me dropping probably about 50 pounds in about 3 months, which you would think is not healthy, but when you start out at around 290, you're just getting back into what's healthy levels. And so now it's about maintaining. I have relaxed a little bit, but I'm still predominantly keto. In fact, today I cheated a little bit with breakfast, and the hot chicken sandwich definitely is cheating. But you'll notice I still add like butter to my coffee, which it's just delicious. It's amazing. I also drink a lot of butter tea too, which is really good. But anyway, I didn't realize that I was going to be doing this, and so I left the joking about to the bar, because when I put that in there, I didn't realize it was going to be early in the day. But to the bar, taking time to relax is good. So anyway, thank you guys for listening, and hopefully you guys will be less burned out in your day-to-day life.
Thank you.